The indigenous peoples that I chose to study for my term project were the Nenet peoples of northern Russia. In my presentation, I'll be covering 4 main topics. The first is some background information on the Nenet people. The second is contact from the outside world. The third is the impact of the modern world. And the fourth is why should we care? So starting off with some background information. The Nenet people live in the Siberian Arctic of Russia. They speak a Samoyedic language, which is related to Finnish. Nowadays, many Nenet people under the age of 50 years old speak mainly Russian due to the residential schools during Stalin's rule in the 1930s. Nenet is derived from a Nenet noun meaning human being. The Nenet people have a population of around 35,000. 10,000 of which being full-time or part-time traditional Nenet people, and the other 25,000 being non-traditional. So an example of that would be a descendant of a traditional Nenet person, but they're now living in modern-day society, but still identify as Nenet. Oh, and just going back to this, the highlighted red is the territory of the Nenet people. So the Nenet people are known for reindeer herding. They follow the reindeer during their migration. This route spans over 1,000 kilometers from the pastures near the northern taiga forest in the winter to the Arctic tundra pastures in the summer. Along this journey, they cross over miles of the frozen Ob River. So in this picture here, this green is the taiga forest. So during the winter, this is mainly where they are. And then once summer comes, they migrate towards this coast here, which is the Kara River. Same in this picture here. And the Ob River just kind of flows here. Their whole life basically revolves around the reindeer. So the Nenets rely on the reindeer for many things, including food, clothing, shelter, tools, and to pull their sled. So for food, they eat the meat of the reindeer. They primarily eat the meat raw, but sometimes they'll either eat it boiled or frozen. They also eat fish and berries. For the fish, they eat salmon and muksun. And for berries, they eat mountain cranberry, but only during the summer months. They even drink the reindeer's blood, which they claim that it's rich in vitamins. The Nenets worship many spirits/gods, which are represented in the form of wooden dolls. Many Nenet people, however, have been influenced into believing the Catholic or Orthodox religious view. Only the most Eastern Nenet groups still uphold their traditional beliefs. According to the Nenet people, the seasons are a mirror of the battle in the spirit world between the sky god Num, which represents the forces of good, and the underworld god of Na, which represents the forces of evil. This battle sets the rhythm of the seasons. So whenever Num, the sky god, is winning, it's summer and it's warm and it's nice. And in winter, Na is winning this battle because he's the forces of evil. That's why it's cold and bitter and stuff. The moon also meddles in their affairs every month, and it also affects how the Nenet people live their lives. They also sacrifice reindeer to the gods. So contact from the outside world. The Nenets were first threatened by the outside world in the 1930s under Joseph Stalin's communist rule. The 2 main threats to the Nenets people were collectivization as well as residential schools. Both of these were implemented by Stalin. So during the period of collectivization and collective farms, the state required a payment of a majority % of profits made by each person or farm. This included the Nenet people who sold their reindeer meat as a form of payment to the state. Many Nenet groups were placed on reindeer farms, which were controlled by the state, and they were prohibited to follow their traditional migration paths, so they were forced to stay on these farms. Also during this time period, many Nenet children were taken from their families and they were sent to residential schools where they were not allowed to speak their own language or practice their own culture. They were forced to speak Russian, so basically they were being assimilated. That is very much similar to what happened in Canada with our Indigenous peoples. So after the fall of communism, those children that were in the residential schools, they were now young adults. And many of them decided to join modern day society since they had been so assimilated. In these cities, though, it was still hard for them to adapt to this new way of life because they were so used to the cyclical rhythm of their traditional Nenet migrations throughout the seasons. So as a result, many of these people suffered from alcoholism, unemployment, and mental health problems. So impact of the modern world. In the 1970s, natural gas reserves were discovered in the Yamal Peninsula. This is the exact same territory that the Nenet people occupy. So upon this discovery, the Russians jumped on the opportunity to profit from these gas fields. So this discovery of natural gas was nothing but a threat to the Nenet people and their culture as well as their way of life, in a number of ways, really. So just to list them off, there was the natural gas fields that they constructed to extract the gas, worker villages, pipelines, climate change, pollution. So for pollution, the pollution threatens the quality of the reindeer's grazing pastures, as well as it affects the water. And climate change, as the tundra's permafrost thaws, it releases carbon dioxide and methane into the air. It also is causing freshwater lakes to drain, which are the source of the Nenet's fish supply. So basically their food supply, one of their food supplies. So much permafrost is melting that a perfectly preserved baby mammoth has come to the surface that is estimated to have died 42,000 years ago. That's how much it's melting. Also, the ice is thawing much quicker in the spring and taking longer to freeze over in the fall, which results in the Nenet people having to change their centuries-old migration patterns. The rising temperature also affects the tundra's vegetation, which is the reindeer's source of food in the winter. So this picture here just illustrates the modern infrastructure that is being built directly in the way of the migration path to the Kara Sea. So in the winter, the Nenet's people are primarily farther down than here, and they travel up along here to this coast, just basically this northern tundra area. And as you can see, they have pipelines. This green one here, this is a railroad line. And then this dotted yellow is where they plan to. And then this cross hatching is just like the oil fields, as well as these here. Another impact of the modern world is nuclear testing. So there are around 120 underground and atmospheric nuclear testings taking place on the Arctic Novaya Zemlya island. And this is right next to the Kara Sea, where the Nenet people migrate. And it is said that the Nenet people of that area have abnormally higher cancer rates than those that are more eastward or more westward. Why should we care? The Nenets are one of the few remaining indigenous peoples of the world that still practice their traditional culture. Many other indigenous peoples have been assimilated, resulting in their culture going completely extinct. Indigenous cultures are seemingly the only cultures left that care for the land truly and wholeheartedly, and their concerns should really be our concerns as well. We're only given one planet to live on. Why exploit it and destroy it? What we do to our planet, we really end up doing to ourselves as well. And here are my resources. Thank you for listening to my presentation.